He deported his pregnant wife after believing a lie.
Is he the father of your child?
Is he the father her lover is her brother?
We may lose them both.
3 days after Baek Do-yoon sent his pregnant wife out of Korea, every piece of evidence he had trusted turned against him. The man in the hotel photographs was Samuel Williams, Precious's older brother and an international financial crimes lawyer, secretly helping her trace millions stolen from Baekwon Industries. The infertility report had been altered. The documents discovered in her studio had been planted. The immigration complaint had been prepared before she was accused. And the brass key she left at the airport had opened a hidden compartment beneath Woolrim Pavilion, containing the original invoices, a map connecting the fraudulent suppliers, and a recording proving that she had been trying to protect him. But the truth arrived too late. By the time Do-yeon understood what he had done, Precious had collapsed in Calabar. She was bleeding heavily. Their unborn child's heartbeat was weakening, and the woman he had sent away was already behind an operating room door, fighting for both their lives. The surgery lasted 3 hours. Do-yeon remained beneath the harsh corridor lights with the ultrasound photograph resting between his palms. His phone vibrated repeatedly with calls from Korea. He did not answer. Across from him, Evelyn sat with her arms folded tightly over her chest. Samuel stood near the window, staring into the pale Calabar morning. No one spoke. When the operating room doors finally opened, the doctor stepped into the corridor and removed her mask. "We stopped the bleeding," she said. "The baby's heartbeat has stabilized. Mrs. Baek is beginning to regain consciousness, but she is extremely weak and still under the effects of the anesthesia. The next 24 hours are critical." Do-yeon rose immediately. "Can I see her?" The doctor looked toward Evelyn. "She is my daughter," Evelyn said. Do-yeon lowered his eyes. "I know." Evelyn studied him for several seconds. 5 minutes. Precious looked fragile beneath the hospital sheets. Her braids had been loosened for surgery, and her eyes remained closed as the machines around her measured every heartbeat Do-yeon had nearly lost the right to hear. He sat beside the bed, but did not touch her. "I believed loving you meant giving you my name," he whispered. "When fear came, I used that name against you." His voice broke. "You asked me to look at you. I looked at photographs. You asked me to trust you. I trusted a document. You were protecting my company and carrying my child, and I made you defend your dignity before strangers." Precious's fingers moved faintly against the sheet. Do-yeon leaned forward. Her eyes slowly opened. Confusion crossed her face first, then recognition, then fear. She turned her head toward the door. "Call my mother." The request was barely louder than a breath. Do-yeon stood immediately. He did not ask her to listen to him. He did not explain how far he had traveled. He did not reach for her hand. He left the room. That was the first thing he did after learning the truth that was not meant to relieve his own pain. Evelyn entered without looking at him. Samuel remained in the corridor. "She may never forgive you," he said. Do-yeon looked through the narrow window in the hospital door. "I know. Do you?" Do-yeon folded the ultrasound photograph carefully. "I signed the paper that sent her away. There is no explanation that changes that." His phone vibrated again. This time, he answered. Sebom's voice came through urgently. "Moojin contacted me. Seola is preparing to make him take responsibility for everything. He believes she is also moving the remaining funds and destroying the vendor records." Do-yeon looked toward Precious's room. For most of his life, his instinct had been to take control before asking what anyone else wanted. He nearly told Samuel to arrange Precious's transfer to a private hospital while he returned to Korea. The order reached his lips and stopped. He turned to the doctor. "What does Precious need?" "Rest, monitoring, and familiar people around her. Moving her now would be dangerous." Do-yeon nodded. Then he looked at Samuel. "I am returning to Korea. Nothing concerning her treatment will be changed without her permission." Samuel's expression shifted slightly. It was not forgiveness. It was recognition that Do-yeon had finally begun to understand the difference between helping someone and deciding for them. Before leaving, Do-yeon sent Precious one message. I am going back to clear your name. I will not ask you for anything in return. In Huayang City, Siola summoned Mu Jin to a private conference room at Masyong Corporation. She wore a white suit and carried herself with the calm of someone who believed one final sacrifice could preserve everything. Mu Jin had spent years believing that proximity to power would eventually make him powerful. The moment Seol-ah decided he was disposable, loyalty became the last thing he intended to give her. "You will take responsibility for the transfers," she said. Mu Jin stared at her. "You said we were partners. We were useful to each other. And now? Now investigators need one believable architect." His face hardened. "My loyalty kept Baekwon alive when Do-yoon was still a child. And what did that loyalty earn you?" The question struck exactly where she intended. Mu Jin had spent decades serving powerful families who praised his usefulness but denied him authority. Seola leaned closer. "You controlled the accounts. You resented the Baek family. You had access to Do-yoon's electronic signature. The story already makes sense. What happens to me? You receive enough money to disappear. And if I refuse? Every document will show that you acted alone." Mu Jin reached inside his coat as though adjusting it. The small recorder hidden in his pocket continued running. Do-yoon left Calabar before noon. He landed in Korea the following evening, exhausted and still wearing the dark suit in which he had waited outside Precious's operating room. He did not return to Wolrim Estate. He went directly to Baekwon Tower and called an emergency shareholder meeting for the next morning. Samuel had already submitted the original invoices and transaction map to financial crimes investigators. Based on the restored security footage, banking records, and hospital access logs, investigators had obtained warrants before the meeting began. Seola entered the boardroom expecting Do-yoon to isolate Mu Jin, protect the merger, and preserve both families from public disgrace. Instead, Sebom stood beside a large screen displaying office entry records, altered schedules, and restored security footage. The first recording showed Mu Jin entering Precious's studio with a master access card. The second showed him carrying documents into the room before the supposed discovery of the evidence. Seola remained seated. "That proves Mu Jin entered the studio. It does not prove I ordered him." Sebom changed the image. The next record showed Seola using a restricted executive corridor near Precious's studio on the same evening. Samuel joined by video from Calabar. Behind him were the original invoices Precious had hidden beneath Wolrim Pavilion. "The false suppliers were not random companies," he said. "Each one connects through layered ownership to Masyong-controlled subsidiaries." A transaction map appeared on the screen. 4 fake construction companies had received Baekwon funds. The money moved through accounts in Europe before returning to companies controlled by Masyong executives. 2 authorization chains ended inside Chairman Ma's private executive office. Internal correspondence showed that he had known the Masyong subsidiaries were insolvent before proposing the merger to Baekwon. Dr. Hai-rim submitted the hospital access history. It showed that Do-yoon's medical records had been opened without authorization and that the final consultation page ruling out infertility had been removed. The administrator who confirmed the false report had fled the country on the same evening Precious was deported. Another report showed that Nurse Bae Yu-ra had repeatedly accessed Precious's medical schedule, changed appointments, and sent altered instructions. Nurse Bae appeared through recorded testimony. "I accepted money from Attorney No," she said. "I was told only to delay appointments and create pressure. I did not know Mrs. Beck would be removed from Korea." Attorney No's communications revealed that he had prepared Precious's immigration complaint weeks before the fraudulent documents were supposedly discovered. He had also arranged for the hearing notice to be delivered to the wrong department inside Baekwon. The removal had not been an emergency reaction. It had been a plan. Each piece of evidence had come from a different person. No single box had solved the mystery. Precious had simply left the first path. The boardroom doors opened. Mu Jin entered carrying a small recorder. Seola turned toward him. "What are you doing here?" Mu Jin placed the device on the table and pressed play. Seola's voice filled the room. "You will take responsibility for the transfers." Her composure broke. She rose sharply. "You coward. Mujin gave a bitter laugh. Your mistake was treating me exactly as the Becks did. Useful until blame became more valuable than loyalty. Investigators entered through the side doors. Seola looked at Do-yoon. Do you think Precious is innocent in all this? Several board members turned toward her. She lied to you, Seola continued. She hid meetings. She trusted her brother with information about your company because she did not trust you. Do-yoon absorbed the accusation. She was right not to trust the man I became. Seola's eyes filled with fury. She took the life that should have been mine. No, Do-yoon said. I chose a different life. You decided my choice was a humiliation you had the right to correct. I saved this company while she investigated it. You used its weakness to rob it. I gave you evidence. You gave me lies. Her voice lowered. And you gave those lies power. The room became silent. Do-yoon did not look away. Yes, he said. I did. That answer defeated her more completely than denial could have. She could no longer claim that she had controlled an innocent man. She had only weaponized a flaw already living inside him. Investigators escorted Seola from the boardroom. Mujin followed under separate guard after agreeing to cooperate with the financial inquiry. Attorney No was arrested later that afternoon. Nurse Bae received protection in exchange for her testimony. Chairman Ma was removed from Maseong Corporation after investigators exposed the hidden debts, false suppliers, and shell companies behind the merger proposal. Do-yoon did not remain to watch the arrests. His final stop was his mother's office. They had already confronted the truth before he left for Nigeria. This time, he had not come for another confession. He placed 2 formal resolutions on her desk. One removed her from Baekwon Industries. The other ended her authority over the family foundation. Yeon-suk stared at the documents. You are choosing that woman over your own mother. No, I am preventing my mother from harming anyone else. I built this family. You built a system where love was measured by obedience. Precious turned you against me. Do-yoon shook his head. Precious tried to protect me from knowing what you had done. Even after you threatened her marriage, her residency, and her child, she was still afraid the truth would destroy me. Yeon-suk's control weakened. After your father died, you were all I had. I was your son, he said quietly. Not something you were entitled to keep. You will regret humiliating this family publicly. I already know what it means to choose reputation over someone I love. For the first time, Do-yoon saw not only the controlling woman who had helped destroy his marriage, but the frightened widow who had spent years converting grief into authority. Understanding her wound did not erase her choices. He pushed the resolutions toward her. Any future relationship between us will begin only when you can describe what you did without calling it protection. Then he left her alone with the power she could no longer use. The following day, Do-yoon faced the public. Before walking onto the stage, he sent Precious a copy of the statement he was about to read. His message contained one sentence: "You do not owe me forgiveness. You were owed the truth." At a press conference broadcast across Korea, Do-yoon announced that Precious had been falsely accused of financial and immigration fraud. He revealed that Baekwon executives, Maseong Corporation, members of his legal team, and individuals inside his own family had manipulated corporate, medical, and immigration records. Then he addressed his own role. I signed the withdrawal of marital sponsorship, he said. The room became silent. I accepted evidence that confirmed my fears and rejected the voice of the person I had promised to trust. I allowed my pride and fear to matter more than her dignity. Manipulation explains how the lies reached me. It does not excuse what I chose to do with them. Within minutes of the broadcast, Baekwon's share price began to fall. The board demanded that Do-yoon step down as acting chairman while the investigation and internal reforms continued. He accepted without protest. Precious watched the press conference from her hospital bed in Calabar. Evelyn sat beside her. Samuel stood near the window. When Do-yoon admitted that pride had mattered more to him than her voice, Precious switched off the screen. Her tears came quietly. Not because she had forgiven him, because the man she loved had finally understood the cost of what he had done, and understanding had arrived too late to protect the woman she had once been. 2 weeks later, the first letter arrived. 2 weeks after Do-yeon's public confession, the first letter arrived. By then, the fraud complaint against Precious had been withdrawn. Immigration authorities canceled the removal order, corrected her legal record, and opened an investigation into the officials who had processed the manipulated case. Precious was legally free to return to Korea. She chose not to. After leaving the hospital, she remained in Nigeria. She did not return to Wolrim Estate. For several weeks, she stayed in her mother's home in Calabar, where the rooms were always filled with familiar voices, open windows, and the smell of food being prepared in the kitchen. Her body recovered slowly. Her heart did not. Do-yeon continued writing. He sent no jewelry, property, or dramatic promises. In the first letter, he admitted that he had ordered Saebom to investigate her movements. In the second, he apologized for remaining silent when Baekwon executives insulted Nigeria. In another, he wrote, "I used provision as proof that I was a good husband because it was easier than becoming an honest one." Precious read every letter. She answered none. Samuel did not ask whether she intended to forgive him. Evelyn did not tell her what decision to make. For most of her marriage, powerful people had treated her life as something they were entitled to arrange. Her family refused to repeat that mistake. When her doctor finally permitted her to resume light work, Precious returned first to drawing. With Samuel's help, she secured a long-term community lease on an abandoned courthouse near the Calabar coast. The building had once handled family and immigration disputes. Its walls were cracked. Its windows were broken. Weeds had spread across the courtyard. When Precious first walked through the cleared eastern hall, Samuel looked around doubtfully. "You nearly died, and this is how you choose to recover?" She ran her fingers along a damaged wall. Damaged is not the same as useless. Samuel recognized the words. Precious planned to restore part of the courthouse as a support center for women returning from difficult marriages abroad. The center would provide legal guidance, temporary assistance, counseling referrals, and a place where women could speak without being treated as evidence in someone else's argument. She named it the Adesewa Center for Women and Families, after the grandmother who had taught Evelyn that survival was not the same as surrender. Over the next 3 months, Precious's pregnancy advanced while her strength slowly returned. Do-yeon remained away from Baekwon's leadership. Independent directors controlled the company while investigators rebuilt its internal systems. He began counseling. At first, he approached it as he approached corporate failure. He wanted clear causes, measurable progress, and a plan that could be completed. His counselor refused to give him one. Instead, Do-yeon was forced to examine the beliefs that had shaped him. That silence was dignity. That control was protection. That providing money excused emotional absence. That suspicion was wiser than vulnerability. That a powerful man could claim to love someone while denying her the right to define her own experience. He continued writing to Precious. He did not ask why she had not replied. He did not ask Samuel for updates she had not authorized him to share. When doctors discussed the pregnancy, he requested information only through the channels Precious approved. It was the first time in his life he practiced restraint without calling it weakness. During the 7th month of her pregnancy, Precious finally gave him permission to visit Calabar and discuss the baby's care. Do-yeon arrived alone. No assistants followed him. No driver waited outside. Evelyn opened the door and looked at the small travel bag in his hand. "You remember how to wash vegetables?" "Yes." "We will discover whether that answer is honest." It was not forgiveness, but she allowed him inside. Precious sat in the living room near an open window. Her pregnancy was now visibly advanced. Her long braids rested over one shoulder and a folder of courthouse plans lay beside her. Do-yeon stopped several steps away. "You look well." "I am recovering." He sat only after she indicated the chair. For several minutes they discussed medical appointments, travel restrictions, and the baby's health. Then Do-yeon opened a folder. I contacted a specialist in Seoul, he began. I thought we could arrange. Precious's expression changed. Do-yeon stopped. The old instinct had returned so naturally that he had nearly failed to recognize it. He closed the folder. I am sorry. I should have asked first. Silence settled between them. What do you want? He asked. Precious studied him carefully. I want my doctor here. I want my mother in the room. And I do not want decisions made around me as though pregnancy has removed my voice. Do-yeon nodded. Then that is what will happen. Before leaving the house, he cancelled the preliminary arrangements he had made. It was a small moment. No one applauded him. Precious did not reward him with affection, but change was finally becoming something he practiced, rather than something he announced. Do-yeon continued visiting only when invited. Sometimes Precious spoke to him for an hour. Sometimes she allowed him 10 minutes. On other days, she asked Samuel to tell him she was too tired. Do-yeon accepted every boundary. He attended medical appointments by video when Precious permitted it. He listened while she asked questions. He did not answer for her. When the doctor explained possible delivery complications, Do-yeon felt fear rise inside him. His old instinct was to demand the safest hospital, the best specialist, and immediate control of every decision. Instead, he asked Precious, "What would make you feel safe?" She looked at him for several seconds before answering. It was the first question he should have asked months earlier. One evening, Precious found Do-yeon waiting inside the cleared eastern hall of the abandoned courthouse. He had arrived early for a scheduled meeting with Samuel and had been warned not to enter the unstable western wing. He was studying the damaged roof from a safe distance. "What will you do with this room?" he asked. "A legal resource center." "And the courtyard?" "Community programs, childcare, support groups." Do-yeon nodded. "I would like to contribute." Precious's expression became guarded. "I do not need Baekwon's name on the building." "I did not offer the company's name." "Then what are you offering?" "Funding without control, or labor, if you prefer." Precious almost smiled. "You are not qualified for construction work." "I was once trained to wash vegetables." "That remains under review." For the first time since the airport, something warm passed between them. It disappeared quickly, but it had existed. Do-yeon eventually donated through an independent trust whose conditions gave him no authority over the center. He also worked quietly with Samuel to establish legal partnerships for women facing immigration abuse. He never announced the contribution publicly. 7 weeks after his first visit, Do-yeon returned to Calabar for a medical appointment Precious had permitted him to attend. He was staying in a nearby hotel when her contractions began before sunrise. Evelyn called the hospital. Samuel contacted him. "Do not misunderstand this," Samuel said. "She has not forgiven you." "I know. She believes the child should not enter the world surrounded by the same silence that damaged your marriage." Do-yeon reached the hospital and waited outside the delivery room. He did not attempt to enter. He did not ask the staff to make an exception. Hours passed. Finally, Evelyn stepped into the corridor. "She says you may come in." Do-yeon followed her quietly. Precious lay exhausted beneath the hospital lights. Against her chest was their daughter. Do-yeon stopped near the door. The sight of them broke through what remained of his composure. Precious watched him approach. "Her name is Baek Hanul Adesewa." Do-yeon looked at her. "Hanul for her Korean family?" Precious said. "Adesewa for mine. She will never be taught that one half of herself deserves more space than the other." Do-yeon took the baby with trembling hands. Hanul's eyes remained closed, her tiny fingers curled against his shirt. "I see your heart," he whispered. Precious's eyes filled with tears. "Then teach her never to stay where her voice is ignored." "I will." This time, he did not call it a promise. A promise was something spoken. Precious now required proof. The months after Hanul's birth were not simple. Do-yeon remained in Calabar for several weeks, but he stayed in a nearby apartment rather than the Williams family home. He visited according to Precious's schedule. He learned to prepare bottles, change nappies, and carry Hanul through the house during the hours when she refused to sleep. Evelyn corrected him often. Samuel mocked him without mercy. Precious watched. Do-yoon did not perform fatherhood as an argument for reconciliation. He became Hanul's father because she deserved one. When he returned to Korea, he maintained regular calls and traveled back whenever Precious agreed. He never used the child to pressure her. 18 months after Hanul's birth, the restored courthouse reopened as the Adesewa Center for Women and Families. Nigerian drums blended with soft Korean strings in the courtyard. Women from both communities filled the restored building with conversation, music, and life. The old courtroom had become a legal resource hall. Former offices had been transformed into counseling rooms and temporary support spaces. Near the entrance stood a wall where women could write messages to others beginning again. No one's voice is evidence against them. You are allowed to leave. You are allowed to rebuild. Do-yoon attended without reporters. He had not returned to Baekwon as chairman. He served only as an advisor while the company remained under independent leadership. Evelyn found him in the kitchen washing dishes beside Samuel. Hanul rested against his back in a bright patterned wrap. "You miss these," Evelyn said, placing another bowl beside him. Samuel laughed. "The former chairman still requires supervision." "I was not trained for this," Do-yoon replied. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "You were trained to believe other people would always clean up after you." Do-yoon accepted the remark. Across the courtyard, Precious watched them. She wore an emerald dress embroidered with gold. Her waist-length braids fell over one shoulder. The confidence in her face no longer came from believing her marriage would protect her. It came from knowing she could protect herself. At sunset, Do-yoon found her beneath a flowering tree near the courthouse wall. He carried the small wooden box Precious had left on their anniversary table. Precious accepted it. Inside was the ultrasound photograph she had left behind. Her original message remained on the back: "To the man who taught me that home can exist in another person." Beneath the photograph, Do-yoon had placed a handwritten card. "You were my home. I treated you like a possession. I am learning the difference." He did not kneel. He did not bring a ring. "I will continue being Hanul's father," he said. "I will respect whatever future you choose. I am not asking you to reward me for finally becoming responsible." Precious closed the wooden box. "When you proposed, you promised to choose me while the world watched. I remember. You failed when no one was watching." "I know." She looked toward their daughter, laughing in Evelyn's arms. "When I restore a building, I do not hide every crack. Some damage must remain visible so people remember what nearly brought the structure down." Do-yoon met her eyes. "And us?" Precious allowed the silence to settle. For more than a year, Do-yoon had answered difficult moments with action instead of defense. He had accepted distance. He had respected her boundaries. He had cleared her name without demanding her return. He had learned to become Hanul's father without using the child as a bridge back into Precious's life. None of it erased what he had done. But it changed what might still be possible. Precious reached for his hand. "We are not restored yet." His fingers closed carefully around hers. "But the foundation is stronger." They walked back toward the courtyard together. Not as a perfect couple. Not as two people pretending the past had disappeared. They walked as a Nigerian woman who had reclaimed her voice, a Korean man learning to love without control, and the parents of a daughter who would grow up knowing that every part of her story belonged to her. Precious had not reached for his hand because he suffered. She had not done it because he apologized. She allowed him to walk beside her because, over time, he had become someone capable of hearing the word no without turning it into punishment. Do-yoon finally understood that love was not proven by holding someone so tightly that they could not leave. It was proven by creating a life in which they were free to stay. If Precious's courage moved you, like this video and share it with someone who believes love should never cost a person their dignity. Subscribe for more emotional Afro-Korean romance stories. And tell us in the comments, could you rebuild trust after a betrayal like this?